DC News Now. The feds searching for answers after an American Airlines flight collides with a military helicopter.
I just saw a fireball and then it was just gone.
The work being done to get answers to grieving families. Communities left in disbelief.
Devastating.
These families will never be the same, but they will never be forgotten.
How the DMV is remembering the 67 lives lost. First responders working overtime. Recovery teams scouring the Potomac to pull crash debris from the water. And tracking rain through your Friday night. Meteorologist Damon Matson tells us if the skies will dry out over the weekend. We begin with breaking news tonight at 6 o'clock. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for DC News Now at 6. I'm Chris Flanagan. Susan Tran has a night off. Recovery efforts continue tonight after a mid-air crash Wednesday night killed all 67 passengers and crew on an American Airlines flight and a Black Hawk military helicopter near Reagan National Airport. Taking a live look right now at the Potomac. A crew spent the day trying to get that military helicopter out of the river. You can see what appears to be a security boat there on safety patrol. 41 bodies so far have been recovered from the Potomac River. Now, officials say all bodies are expected to be recovered. And we're learning more about the 67 people who died in this tragedy. There were mothers, fathers, friends, teachers, children, and members of a figure skating community. Officials still working tonight to identify the bodies recovered and also get answers for those who lost loved ones. We now know the names of 2 of the 3 Army soldiers on that Black Hawk helicopter. On the left here is Chief Warrant Officer 2, Andrew Lloyd Eves. He was 39 years old and from Great Mills, Maryland. That's in St. Mary's County. Eves' body has not yet been recovered. On the right, that is Staff Sergeant Ryan Austin O'Hara from Georgia. O'Hara was 28 years old. Now, the name of the 3rd soldier will not be released at this point at the request of the family. And we have live team coverage tonight as more details emerge. DC News Now's Liberty Simmons speaking with the families of those who died, including from the local skating community. Randy Bass is on the Potomac, where recovery efforts continue tonight. But first, local agencies giving updates on where those recovery efforts stand right now. Marielle Carbone was at that briefing. And Marielle, the NTSB just gave a briefing a few minutes ago there at Reagan National.
Yeah, Chris, they did. We just walked away from that briefing, about a 25-minute briefing about where the investigation stands. And I think one of the biggest things we found out tonight is that we do know that all 3 black boxes, so 2 from the plane, 1 from the helicopter, they have been recovered. And the NTSB is confident that it will be able to get data from all 3 of those devices. That is really key to figuring out what happened in this crash. That's where they'll pull the data, potentially sound from the pilots in both the airplane and the helicopter. So what they can tell us from the boxes pulled out of the airplane, one of them they say was in good condition. That was the flight data recorder. So they began soaking that in alcohol overnight. They opened it up today, and they'll get to work downloading the data from that soon. That data, it won't be released immediately. They have to analyze it and go through some of those processes. The cockpit recorder, they did recover that one from the plane. It did have some water intrusion, which they say is pretty common. So they are working again to go through, dry that, and then get data out of that. As for the black box helicopter, visually, they say that one has no exterior damage. So they say that means it likely isn't compromised, and they should be able to move forward with pulling the data. So that's the good news from the investigation today. Some other questions, a lot of people out here asking about the FAA and the air traffic controller that was working the night of the crash. We are told that the specific air traffic controller working has been interviewed. The ongoing interview is continuing with that person, but the NTSB couldn't answer if there was more than one person working that night during the incident or just that one specific person that they've interviewed. Another comment made tonight, the NTSB, the board member that was speaking to us said that this never should have happened. The way they describe the policies and procedures in place, they say it's like the Swiss cheese effect. There are all different layers. If you run into one issue, there should be another way to go. There should be other policies that you can fall back on, procedures, and of course that didn't happen. We saw this collision. So they say after this investigation, they will likely spend years advocating for change based on what they were able to find in that investigation. So those are some of the key main points. One other aspect, they do say that the Navy salvage team is now working out here. They expect to see some more work happening as of tomorrow to pull the debris out. But luckily, just two main debris fields where they say there are some major pieces that they should be able to pull out and begin investigating. So that's the latest. We'll get more to you from this briefing throughout the night and, of course, online. But reporting live from Reagan, I'm Marielle Carbone, DC News Now.
All right, Mara, a lot of new information there at the airport. Thank you. Meanwhile, grim discoveries are being made near the crash site on the Potomac River. One man with the environmental group, Potomac Riverkeeper Network, says he plucked out what appears to be part of an airline seat near Alexandria. He also found several American Airlines branded sugar packets and a waterlogged landing gear checklist.
These are some of the sugar packets from the plane and some debris, but you can kind of see this little debris field that kind of works its way all the way up. This is part of the landing gear procedure. The manuals from the plane. There's another piece of the plane. It's like part of the seat, actually. Jesus.
Well, Dean Nawjok says law enforcement told him he could go downriver as long as he stayed away from the main crash site. All right, our live team coverage continues now. DC News Now's Randy Bass joining us live from Reagan National. And Randy, it looked like crews were working to get that helicopter out of the Potomac today. What were you able to see?
Yeah, Chris, what appeared to be a very large Coast Guard ship just pulled away here at Reagan National Airport. It had a large crane on the back. We also saw divers in the water. And of course, this is a very grim situation that has started to very quickly evolve here as we approach the 48-hour mark. At this point, we know 41 bodies have been recovered. 28 of them have been positively identified. And those first responders have encountered the unimaginable during their recovery efforts.
We're just coordinating getting that there with this victim off the front of the plane.
DC Fire and EMS dispatch this morning detailing the grim and grueling recovery efforts on a very foggy and rainy Potomac River today.
We have human remains at Gravelly.
Gravelly Point, the park just north of DCA, closed to the public for police staging, now the site of a growing memorial for victims of the crash. Fire Chief John Donnelly says he hopes more victims are recovered as salvage crews get to work tomorrow.
I believe for us to recover the rest of the remains that we are going to need to get the fuselage out of the water.
Meanwhile, in Southwest DC,
We'll be transporting a recovery to South Capitol Street.
responders are bringing those bodies to shore, where crews with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner are staging.
You know, so not until I watch the news did I, get the understanding that here's where they brought all the bodies.
Neighbors watching it all unfold from their apartment windows above.
Yeah, we were just watching almost in silence, like for hours.
Yeah, still a lot of hard work ahead for those first responders in the days, weeks, and months ahead. You heard Fire Chief John Donnelly just a few moments ago saying that he expects that work to remove the plane from the water to start as soon as tomorrow. The story is still developing. We'll bring you new details as we learn them at Reagan National Airport. I'm Randy Bass, DC News Now.
All right, meteorologist Damon Matson in tonight for Chief Meteorologist Janessa Webb. And Damon, a lot of rain today and really hampered, I imagine, the recovery effort, making it more difficult for these rescue first responders.
Yeah, and the crews knew it was coming today with this rain, but it was really heavy at times, and I'm sure that made things very difficult. Check it out here. We did have that rain. It moved in during the early morning, and look at how there are plenty of dark green shades, yellows on the map with that rain continuing to sweep on through. This is what the crews had to deal with, that very heavy rain right across the district at times, and it continued to just push right through continuously through the morning into the afternoon. So those were the kind of conditions that they had to deal with as those recovery efforts continued here today. Now, we're not done with the rainfall as of yet. There was a small little lull during the late afternoon, early evening, but the cold front with this very potent storm system, it's sweeping toward us, and it's going to bring one last surge of rather steady to even heavy rainfall as we head into the night. So if you do have plans to go out and about over the next few hours, you're likely to encounter that steady rainfall coming down as we approach 7, 8 o'clock. But it will start to wrap up the later in the night that we go, so that by midnight, we'll finally be drying things out as we head into the start of the weekend. Now, do we keep dry conditions around all of Saturday and Sunday? We'll have that answer in your full forecast coming up here in just a bit.
All right, Damon, we'll see you then. Meanwhile, as crews work to recover the bodies on the river, we're finding out more about many of those victims. DC News Now's Liberty Simmons is at the Ashburn Ice House in Loudoun County with how loved ones are now remembering members of the skating family killed in that crash.
Truly heartbreaking. You can feel the emotion from the employees and the members here at Ashburn Ice House. They say their hearts have been heavy since learning that their figure skating community was directly affected by this crash.
It's devastating, to wake up and discover that this has even happened.
Cassandra Atkins made figure skating competition outfits for members of the Livingston family who are part of the community here at Ashburn Ice House.
And it just made a pair of skating pants for Ivory for the skate camp that they were on.
Donna and Peter Livingston and their daughters Everly and Lydia were on the American Airlines flight that collided with a U.S. Army helicopter Wednesday.
These families will never be the same, but they will never be forgotten. And they'll always be cheering us on.
Team USA figure skater Jimmy Ma says he knew 6 of the victims on that flight who were training with him, hoping to make it to the Olympics one day.
They were gonna be us in a couple of years. They were the next generation.
Sarah Best and Elizabeth Keys also died in the crash. They were associates at Wilkinson Steckloff, a law firm in D.C. It released a statement saying in part, quote, "We are heartbroken by this terrible tragedy. Liz and Sarah were cherished members of our firm, wonderful attorneys, colleagues, and friends." And the Ashburn Ice House is also providing emotional support dogs for the members to help them get through this tragedy. For now in Ashburn, Liberty Simmons, DC News Now.
So many heavy hearts there indeed. We continue to bring the latest on the mid-air collision throughout our newscasts all night long. You can also find updates online 24/7 at dcnewsnow.com. Well, coming up here in DC News Now at 6 o'clock as we continue to learn more about the victims from Wednesday's crash, how people in Prince George's County are remembering a 12-year-old ice skater from their neighborhood. And as flights continue to take off and land at DCA, passengers tell us why the crash is not keeping them from getting back on a plane.